now? 'Cause I'm terrible with names. Can you just say your name for me?
Yuttadhammo.
Yuttadhammo. And obviously you were given that name after you were ordained, right?
Right.
And is there a reason for the change in name?
It's just become a tradition. I think they have this ritual. It's not a ritual. No, they have this. What is it? It's a proclamation. So the point being, if someone wants to ordain, you have to make sure they are qualified, and then you have to make sure that the whole community agrees and is aware, and everyone is watching, and everyone is clear that there's nothing shady being done, and this person really is properly ready to ordain. And so they do this all in the Pali language. It's an ancient ritual, I guess you could say, but it's not a ritual, it's just a proclamation, but it's done in Pali. And because it's done in Pali, English names, Thai names, foreign names don't work, because you have to say, hey, we're now going to ordain this person. So in order to do it in Pali, you have to make their name Pali. It's become traditional to give certain types of names. Like my name was chosen because I was born on a Wednesday.
Really? Hello and welcome. I'm Dennis Semsey.
And I'm Sam Hornberger.
On this episode, I sat down and talked to a Buddhist monk trained in Thailand and living in Canada. You are listening to the No Faith in Humanity podcast, the podcast about
meditation's real work. It deals with the deepest, darkest parts of who you are.
Okay, Sam. How you doing? Back again for another exciting episode.
That's always the difficult question to answer nowadays. How am I doing? So I'll skip over that one.
Okay. You're like, pass. So I had the pleasure of sitting down and speaking with a Canadian Buddhist monk who trained in Thailand. And it was, first of all, this was our first guest that we had no relation to. We didn't know anything about it. I just kind of reached out to him and agreed to be interviewed, which was really exciting, and kind of I felt like this podcast became more legitimate because of that. And he's also our first international guest, which is a whole nother piece of excitingness. We're
reaching out to Canada first. It's like that American that went to Niagara Falls and was like, yeah, I've been to a foreign country. Like, yeah, sure you have.
Canada's beautiful, but you're right. It's very similar to America in many ways. It's not really like going to another country. I agree with that. But yeah, so I got to sit down and talk with him about his faith journey, what kind of led him to go into the monastery, and what it was like a little bit in there, and what his life has been like out of it. And it's a really fascinating interview, and I'm really excited for you to hear. It was unbeknownst to our listener, we're changing the format a little bit. We learned that after doing this and talking about guests that we wanted to have on, we kind of discovered that we both want to talk to different people. We both get excited about talking to different people. We're excited I feel like we're both really excited to hear what the other person discovers, but I don't know if we have the same drive and passion to talk to certain individuals. Decided that we're going to try to change the format up a little bit. So Sam, you haven't heard really any of this interview that you're about to listen to right now in real time and kind of have your reaction to it, which I'm pretty excited about. So pretty much how it's going to happen is like the interview is going to begin in a little bit, and then at any point that you may have some questions, or
I will interrupt the interview and ask my questions, and then we can
question. I was going to say comments, but you can leave the comments to the end of the episode, which we're going to actually finish up once the interview is over. We're gonna discuss I'm going to at least finish my final thoughts, and I would like to know your initial thoughts, because I've been thinking about this for quite some time now. I recorded this a while back, and we're just getting to it right now. And so I'm going to express my final thoughts on it and what has been kind of going through my head over the past few weeks, and then having your initial thoughts. So yeah, just stop when you want if you have a question. I guess any comments or anything you can leave to the end of the interview. And we're going to definitely have musical interludes to separate at least the ending part, because they'll know that you're not part of the interview if you just say, okay, stop, and then they'll know that we're getting pulled out of the interview at that moment. But at least at the end of the interview, we'll have a little musical interlude to indicate that the interview is over and that we're kind of just finishing it off with concluding remarks. Okay. Are you ready for this, Sam? You excited? I'm excited. I'm really excited. For the record, what's the Buddhism that you follow?
It's called Theravada.
And how is that different from?
Well, there's lots of different, the Buddhism branched out, but Theravada claims to have a set of teachings of the Buddha, the historic Buddha, and claims that those are his actual teachings, and tries to follow them and only them strictly and in a fairly, there's a whole commentarial tradition, so in a fairly specific way. There are other schools that, there are a couple of other schools that have different teachings that they say were taught by the Buddha, but a lot of the teachings are actually just later teachings, so they stop following the historic Buddha so much. And they have reasons for that. It's quite complicated to go into, but basically Theravada is the one that more or less sticks to the original teachings, and the other schools tend to recognize that. They tend not to say, no, those aren't the original teachings. They tend to say, okay, those are the original teachings, but we've got more. That's sort of the tendency. But yeah, I don't think I would have fallen into some of the other types of Buddhism in the same way, because I wasn't looking for all the... they get really fancy, and what I was looking for was something... in fact, Thailand turned me off because it's quite fancy, the Buddhism full of, there's these golden pagodas, and it wasn't all that impressive, the Buddhism there. But I found out, and I subsequently learned that, honestly, Thai Buddhism isn't all that impressive for the most part, but, you learn that religion is made up of layers, and Christianity isn't a homogeneous thing. Well, neither is Buddhism. Thai Buddhism alone, there's thousands of different ways of practicing in Thailand. Some of them are pretty crazy, but some of them are pretty impressive. So I'm just lucky I found one that I have no doubt is impressive. The number of people I alone, me who's just some Canadian monk, number of people I've helped, or I've used these teachings to help, it's just impressed the heck out of me. It's there's no question that this is a valid practice. I can give 100% guarantee to someone that this meditation will help them. The only way it'll fail is if they stop practicing it. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, great. And now I know that there's a 15-minute video, I believe it's 15 minutes, of you explaining what you were like before you became Buddhist monk, kind of your journey into Buddhism and everything. If you could just take a few minutes and condense that down for our listeners.
Sure. I was quite depressed in high school. I think that's fairly common, but I didn't do poorly in school. I just didn't really like it. I was homeschooled through public school. So I don't know if that was part of it, but none of my brothers had a problem with school. It just wasn't my thing, and I was ready to drop out in around grade 11. But my parents wouldn't go for it, and so we argued, and they sent me to an alternative school, and eventually I made my way to university, but found that university wasn't any better. I don't know, from a young age I was always thinking about these things. I think a lot of people are. It's just a question of how strong the pull is. So I was thinking about death, and I was keenly aware of how useless it was. Or aware, I mean, it's up for debate, depends who you ask, but I had a sense that there was a certain futility to ordinary life, getting a job, getting old. And by the time you can enjoy life, you're retired. So I thought, there's got to be a better way. And I thought a lot about spirituality. I ended up reading the Tao Te Ching just by chance. Happened to catch a glance of it, and then picked it up and started learning about Eastern philosophy. So when I went to university, there was this idea that somehow there would be some higher philosophy involved, but I found that university was, it's not the fault of university, it's just information wasn't what I was looking for. I thought it was. I thought it's just finding the right information, but university didn't have it. And so I went to Asia sort of probably looking for information, more or less. I wasn't really interested even in meditation. But the more I read, the more information I got about it, the more I realized you actually had to do something. And so I was on my way to China or Japan. I ended up getting a ticket to China. I was in Thailand for 3 months, but I ended up just deciding to do something in Thailand. I wasn't even interested in Buddhism, really. But I kind of just fell into it. When I started practicing meditation, I realized that this was able to tap into that well of suffering that was in my psyche that I'd been living with, and I never really resolved at all. Through my teenage years, I just sort of learned how to get by, and meditation. Suddenly, I realized I was actually doing something about it. I was actually gonna succeed. I was gonna actually fix some of my problems, some of the problems in my mind. And so I spent a month in intensive meditation, and that really changed my outlook on a lot of things, especially spirituality and religion, and sort of gave me an eye-opening look at a way to live your life peacefully, a way to sort of solve some of your problems. And so after that month, I went back to Canada, started studying about Buddhism, and the more I studied, the more I thought, here it is, here's a way, here's a lifestyle, here's a program, really. And I learned more about becoming a monk, and it was more and more appealing. I ended up, trying to follow some of the monastic precepts, even as a layperson. It was just so what I was looking for. And so I argued with my parents. They weren't happy about it. I had changed a lot. I was much less fun to be around. And I just wanted to meditate all the time.
So what was their, why were they so opposed when you wanted to pursue becoming a Buddhist monk? What was their apprehensions?
Well, I don't think my mother was, although I think for her it would be more, she doesn't, she doesn't have the sense of, or she never had sort of the sense of the discipline of it, and so it felt like torturing myself to her. For my father, I think it's very much his two things, I suppose. His Judaism, because his mother won't talk to me, and I haven't talked to her in a long, long time, because Judaism can be quite like that. Apostasy isn't looked upon favorably when you leave the religion. It's kind of like you die to them. And the other thing is, my father very much wanted me to finish my degree. He's got this concern for my financial and material welfare, so that was a big deal for him. we worked it out. I'm actually still working on getting that degree. I'll get it someday. But after 2 years, I more or less got their permission to ordain, which is sort of a requirement, and ended up becoming a monk. I really just fell into all of it, and it's sort of just my good luck. But there's something to how. I mean, we talk a lot about things like karma and the way of cause and effect that's sort of often beyond our ken, beyond what we can understand. And so I mean, it was really pulling me in a lot of ways. Going to Thailand, everyone was telling me to go to Thailand. I wasn't even going to go to Thailand, and then this person was telling me another person, and finally someone, I'd heard all about Thailand all of a sudden, and then suddenly a friend of mine says, "Hey, want to go to Thailand?" And so the two of us were going to go. I was like, okay, if everyone says. He ended up backing out. I went alone. When I got to Thailand and just becoming a monk, it was just so easy. Everything just fit into place. So I think that there's something to that as well, I think.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Yeah. I'm really glad that we're talking. It's like, I feel like I have a lot of, I talk about this on the podcast and everything, a lot about that I struggle deeply with anxiety. And my sister is actually going to absolutely love this, this episode, because she's been telling me for the longest time to just learn to meditate. She was like, you got to learn to meditate. It's going to be so helpful. Because in my mind, anxiety is just a part of life. Like, this is just who I am. This is just in my nature. This is just, I have to learn to deal with it. Instead of like fixing with it, I have to learn to deal with it, which is, I guess, something that you were kind of saying before. So at first, was meditation like uncomfortable for you? Was it something like a discipline that you had to practice and learn to do?
I mean, when we hear about meditation, we think right away, oh, it's something that's going to calm you down. It's going to be peaceful. And so I teach people meditation, and in the beginning, they're like, oh, it's so peaceful. And I'm thinking, well, you haven't even tapped into it. It's not going to be peaceful at all. Meditation's real work. It deals with the deepest, darkest parts of who you are. It's meant to be uncomfortable. I always tell people that, it's designed, it's purposefully supposed to take you out of your comfort zone. So yeah, meditation's tough. I mean, what we don't understand, I think, is that happiness is tough. Happiness is not easy. We struggle to find happiness, but we have this idea that somehow it's something that you should just get, if you're lucky or if you somehow push the right buttons. But we don't ever think that, if you work in the right way, you can actually work to be happy. So anxiety is something that you have to struggle with. And if you do struggle with it in the right way, just a second.
At this point, we lost connection with each other. Luckily, a few minutes later, we were able to regain that connection and continue our conversation. I began our conversation asking him a little bit more about realizations in meditation, because my ignorant mind, the way that it was explained to me and the way that I have always thought it to be, was that meditation was either you sit there, calm, breathing, blank mind, and then things just come in and you have a realization just out of nowhere that it just comes to you. Or what he was saying is that you have this realization just as you go about your day, and then you meditate on that realization. But actually, meditation is the techniques and practices that allow you to draw out those realizations so that they no longer come out of the blue, but you're able to have them on a daily basis, weekly basis. He then used my own anxiety as an example. He said that I may not think I like being an anxious person, but in reality, if I watch my anxiety, or if I watch the patterns that my anxiety takes, I may soon find out that actually me wanting control or being anxious or worried about something actually gives me a weird sense of comfort, like it's been there and it's been like this my entire life. And actually, if it was any different, I would feel uncomfortable about that. And that hit me hard. That was one of the many realizations I got from this discussion that I had with him, one of the many eye-opening moments. So let's jump back into the interview, and I asked him, would you say meditation is definitely like the centerpiece of practicing Buddhism?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, The real problem is that we have a lot of preconceptions about meditation. I mean, the things we hear about meditation and our general idea of it is pretty far off the mark, I would say. I mean, there are meditations that are designed to calm you down, but when we talk about meditation in Buddhism, I think we really have to understand that we're talking about something quite a bit different. The meditation is really what ties any kind of meditation together under the title of meditation is that it's about training your mind. It's something mental, it's not physical, and it has to do with cultivating habits of some sort of mental skill or quality. But that could be anything, right? And mostly it's just about cultivating calm, which doesn't really address your problems. It's great, it's comfortable, it's a good skill in and of itself. It doesn't actually get at the root of the problem. So you have to go deeper than that. You have to actually, we focus on the problems and we meditate on our problems. So we study our habits and we watch them and we learn which habits are good, which habits are bad, and we teach ourselves, hey, look, this habit, you're actually causing yourself suffering. And when you see that, you stop, because we don't really want to suffer. It's just that we aren't clear in our minds about what we're doing to ourselves to cause suffering.
So you're saying everybody can benefit from...
I mean, some people are just not capable. They'll try it and they'll just freak out and their minds are just not... But that's a rare sort of person. I mean, it's common for people not to be able to do intensive courses, but I think it's very rare for someone not to benefit, and not to benefit. It's rare for someone not to benefit substantially from the practice. I mean, I get emails from people and messages from people all the time about how I've changed their life. I mean, and people I've never met, people let alone done a course with me. So.
Okay, so just so I understand, it's when you're going into first of all, how long do you meditate for usually?
Well, you meditate anytime. Meditation is for a moment. At the moment when you're clearly aware of something, that's meditating. I mean, so it's not about minutes or hours. It's about moments. How many moments can you be mindful? Can you be clearly aware of things? And so, because that's what reality is made of. When we talk about habits at all, they're all made up of moments. Every moment that you reinforce your anxiety, you're building the habit of being anxious, But it's all made up of moments. So every moment that you're mindful, you're building the habit of being mindful. You're building the habit of objectivity, of non-reactivity, of non-attachment, non-clinging, of contentment, of peace. So you build these habits. Most importantly, you build clarity so that you can see what you're doing to yourself. You can see what's good and bad. That's a habit in itself.
And yeah, I mean, with Buddhism, it's definitely no materialistic stuff. That's something that I've always had the idea. Or when I thought about Buddhism, something besides like being very not killing anything. I'm guessing you're a vegetarian, right?
No, I'm not a vegetarian. I mean, I don't cook or prepare or my own food. People give me. This is how it works. A monk is someone. I mean, the whole idea is to be able to give up society and to free yourself from both sides of it, from the seeking and from the acquiring. So the question is, how do you do that? Because if you're not doing anything for anyone, why should they give you anything? And so the whole idea was to become beggars, basically, and not exactly beggars because we're not allowed to beg, but there's the sense that, in India there was a tradition of supporting religious people who went off into the forest. This had been going on long before the Buddha. These old people, generally older people, would go off into the forest, and their relatives or friends, and eventually just people who lived in the house and had money and had food, wanted to do something good and support people who seemed to be spiritually advanced, so they would feed them. And so the Buddha, sort of fell into this, basically, that, we'll just do this. I mean, that's a great thing. These people are happy, and it makes them feel good when they support us. So, I mean, the point of telling you this is that I depend on people's charity, and they give me the food that they want. If it's meat or if it's vegetarian, I eat it. I don't kill, but and I mean, I think the key is that we're not trying to stop killing or death. I mean, you're never going to stop that. The killing goes on every moment of every day. Animals kill each other, humans kill each other, humans kill animals, animals kill humans. That's not really. The universe isn't going to change, and you're not going to stop death. But the whole point of not killing is to train your mind. It's part of mental training. If you kill, if you steal, if you cheat, if you lie, if you take drugs or alcohol, you're never going to progress spiritually, because there's such cruelty and unwholesomeness involved with that. It's a habit that you're forming. When you kill someone, I mean, I've killed before when I was young, and it changes you. Eating meat doesn't really change you. Most people have trouble struggling with this idea of good and evil. We tend to get so comfortable with being both good and evil that we're not really comfortable with someone who is just good, right? I mean, look at all the television shows and movies now. I hear about like this one Breaking Bad, or there's this series called Game of Thrones. I mean, I'm sure you know about all these. Yeah. But I hear about them, and I just think, the whole idea of good and evil has just gone out the window. It's now, I mean, that's what it seems. I don't know. I don't watch these shows. So. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So you would consider yourself a good person then? You're saying?
No, I mean, that's the goal, right? Or that's just the whole point. When you just the whole idea of striving to be a good person is, I think, is unfortunately not as front and center as it should be. So people like it when you get angry, right? I mean, if I get angry and you don't get angry with me, then I get angry at you because you're not angry with me. Why aren't you angry with me? If I like something, and if I want something, I say, "Oh, I love pizza," and you think, "Yeah, well, I'll take whatever." You get upset because I'm not, I don't. You give me some delicious food, and I say thank you. And how is it? Is it delicious? I'm like, what do I say to that?
It's.
Right?
I live in America, and over the past, I'm sure that you're well aware of the president that we have and everything, and not to get very political, but there has been issues, there has been arguments and everything I've had with my own family, about that, and we've had disagreements and everything, and it almost seems like I have found for myself that I have begun to create echo chambers, create little things where, I find people that agree with me, find people that misery breeds,
company,
thank you. And that's kind of how I feel. So when you say, it's like, when you get angry, you want the other person to be angry. I'm angry about this. I'm angry about, what Trump's doing or whatever. It's like you want people to be combative and to argue with you. And it almost seems like your approach is just, if you found someone that disagreed with you, would you say that it would be your stance to just appreciate that person for who they are?
No, I mean, Buddhism is all about understanding. It's not, you're not trying to take a position like appreciating or not appreciating. You're trying to understand. And the whole point is, if I get angry at you, then I don't understand. I'm hurting myself. It's like hitting yourself in the face. Getting angry is not, it doesn't make the other person suffer. It just makes you suffer. It's not productive. It's not useful. That's all. If someone's evil, you call them evil. I mean, I think Trump's a pretty terrible person. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't get angry about it, you see. Or, I try not to. That's the practice. And then, I say off the cuff that Trump's a terrible person, but there's more to him than that. I mean, he's a person, and he has potential to someday become a very great person. There's we're not static. He could one day become a wonderful individual. Maybe probably not in this lifetime, but
come on, man, gotta give me a little bit of hope. I'm here in America. I wanna be positive about the future of my country.
We're all complex individuals, and a big problem is how we label people and we put them in boxes. Like if you say Trump is a horrible person, you can't win, because he's more complex than that, and he's going to do things that make people happy. In fact, he might do some things that are great. I think he already has done a few things that have actually been good things. It's just kind of random. But and if you don't see that, you just end up on one side of the fence yelling at the people on the other side of the fence. If you want to, you call someone evil and you're not doing anything, you're shouting at a brick wall. If you point out evil as evil, and that's the things that people do, the actions and the speech and so on, then it resonates because it's true. You kill someone, that's evil. It doesn't matter who does it.
No.
You
Yeah.
know.
So there's no justification for killing something or something.
No, I mean, it's more complex than that.
there's
Evil
not,
is
okay.
actually not in the killing. Evil is in the mind state. So if you kill someone, there's no evil done, but the intention to kill and the cruelty and the mind states involved with it, those are really, really bad. That's all. Because if you step on an ant and you didn't see the ant, it's not evil. But if you see the ant and then you purposefully step on it, there's a lot of evil involved.
Like I'm personally, I'm a vegetarian because for ethical reasons. But I do, if I see a mosquito land on me, I'm gonna smack it. I mean, that to be fair.
It's not being very fair. Poor mosquito has no chance.
Yeah, it doesn't. I know. Yeah. I just maybe that is something that I should incorporate. I feel like a lot of the things that you're saying, I'm resonating with, and it may not sound like that, but I'm definitely. I got a lot thinking about it. It's definitely gonna be a lot that I'm gonna have once we end this call. There's gonna be a lot that's going on in my mind about this because I feel like I could benefit a lot from what you're saying and from the lifestyle that you're living. Buddhism, another thing that I've heard over the years is that reincarnation is what happens after life. Is that pretty accurate? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a poor choice of words. It's because in Buddhism, the paradigm for reality in Buddhism isn't things. So a person doesn't actually exist. The paradigm is experiences. Experiences exist, and experiences are momentary. So there's this really neat, the book's actually kind of crappy, but this guy wrote a thesis, Robert Lansley, I think he's a guy who was involved with the Human Genome Project, just a really brilliant doctor. Very famous, and he wrote this, Lansley, I think, Robert Lansley. He wrote this book called Biocentrism, but it's based on his thesis about reality. That's basically this: that reality is first person. So we've gotten so caught up in the idea that there's this third person reality, but it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't mean anything to us as individuals. It's all conceptual. Reality, our reality, whether it's the reality or not, our reality is experiential. We see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we feel, we think. That's all that we know. Everything else is just extrapolation upon that. We saw some things, and so we put together some theories about patterns, and that's what science is. But it's all based on observations. It's based on experiences. It's phenomenology is another word for it. There's just this big movement called phenomenology, radical phenomenology, that kind of thing. And so when you start to look at reality from that point of view, this all breaks down, this idea of birth and death. I mean, what is it then really but another experience? I mean, the moment of death, what dies? So the ordinary way of looking at it would be to say that the person dies, the being dies. But that being never existed, not from an experiential point of view. So, what really happens? Experience doesn't cease. It just continues. And so the idea of reincarnation, it involves a thing, a soul, a being who moves from life to life. But that's not... You don't see that. That's not how we experience reality. That's not a part of the experience of reality, this idea of a soul or a being. All there are moments of experience, and when you die, that doesn't end. This is the claim. Now, it's perfectly empirical. When we die, we're going to realize it or not. A lot of people say when you die, the experience ceases, but there's a disagreement in that regard. So I always people always say, what is this? Why do you believe that when you die why do you believe that when you die that you're reborn again? And I say, well, the real belief is that when you die, experience ceases. Everything about our experience tells us that experience continues from moment to moment to moment. To say that experience ceases at the moment of death, you have to have some pretty substantial evidence for that. And it has to be first-person evidence. I mean, you have to have experience, you have to have evidence that experience can cease in that way, which we don't have. All we have is this continuation of moments after moments of experience. So this certainty we have that at the moment of death, experience ceases is actually rather on shaky ground. It relies upon concepts of the brain, the body, the soul, the self, or, well, not the soul and the self, I suppose, but anyway, it relies upon the presumption that the brain creates experience, the brain creates consciousness, which is a highly, there's no basis for that. We have no evidence for it. And we have no way of understanding consciousness or what causes it. We have no mechanism by which the physical creates the mental. So it's a little more complicated than just reincarnation. I don't know. That's what everyone says. Everyone says in reincarnation. It's more complicated.
Okay, I understand. But my question was going to be asked if there was any room for any, I don't know, like psychedelics or anything like that. That kind of idea. Is that just like absolutely no? Like that it's like I've heard when I've done some research and listened to some some different people like Graham Hancock. He almost says that like ayahuasca or something like that's like a rocket ship to take you to the place where you can kind of take these things, kind of like what you're doing with meditation, looking into yourself, seeing what's wrong, what's causing these anxieties and everything, and kind of taking them out. But he's saying that
all those do is give you something. They broaden your horizons. I mean, they show you things that you would have never seen otherwise. But in the end, you're still just seeing things. You're still just hearing things. I mean, they won't take you closer to understanding the building blocks, because whether you have some profound experience of, shamanistic experience. I mean, I took mushrooms before several times, and I had incredible experiences, and I understand that these are mind-opening experiences, but they don't take you closer to understanding that it's all just experience. They don't take you closer to understanding the reality behind it, that reality is based on experience, and that there's only seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking. Buddhism is, in a nutshell, it's about contentment, and it's about simplicity. It's about seeing what's really there and being able to differentiate between reality and our extrapolation, how we react to things, how we conceive of things, how we cling to things and identify with them. Those are all outside of the realm of reality. I mean, reality is just experience, and drugs aren't going to help you see that.
No. Okay.
For the most part, they just confuse things. They give you too much.
Yes. Just one last question for you. What is the one teaching Buddhism everyone should and can adopt into their life?
Mindfulness. This thing that we call mindfulness. I mean, simple technique. You talk about mindfulness. There's so many techniques, but I have a technique that is so concrete and so easy to learn that it sounds stupid. You try it. You try it, and you hear about it, and you think, that's okay. It's some silly little trick. Maybe it'll work a little bit. This one little trick gets you to nirvana. It's what leads you to enlightenment. I mean, it's kind of sad that I can say that, and nobody's going to actually take me up on it. But I mean, here it is. What I'm saying is here it is. It's really quite simple, and yet people still aren't doing it. Okay, so the simple trick is you remind yourself. You use a mantra when you instead. So, I mean, the ordinary way we react to things, when we like something, we run after it. When we dislike something, we shy away from it. We react to things. We're reactionary. We react to everything. So So the trick is to stop reacting, is to cultivate this habit of just seeing things as they are. So the way you do that is by reminding yourself of what things are. And so it's a silly little exercise. When you see something, for example, you say to yourself, seeing. That's your mantra, that's your meditation. When you feel pain, you say to yourself, pain. When you're angry, you say to yourself, angry. Simple, it's concrete. There's no doubt about what I'm saying, you know. You don't have to doubt about how you'd actually put that into practice. But the results are just astounding. You know, if you actually methodically take this up as a practice, it change your life, no question. When you're anxious, you say to yourself, anxious, anxious. I mean, anxiety is interesting, you see, because there's many things involved. You're anxious for sure, but there's also the physical. And very important is to be able to actually experience things as they are. And so anxiety is one thing, but the tension in your stomach, the tension in your shoulders, the headache, all of that, even the shaking that comes if you're really anxious, all of that is not anxiety. All of that is physical. So, you know, I mean, there's more to talk about there, but the technique's quite simple. You say you're anxious, you say anxious, anxious. You feel tense, you say tense, tense. And you just repeat it to yourself as you experience it. And so, like, the meditation that I teach is just exercises, you know, giving you a simple object to focus on, to cultivate this, to develop this. And if you do it, if you practice it diligently, over time, it really works.
So, how about this? How about you tell me your thoughts on the discussion, and then I'll kind of lead into it, just because I think that would better suit me for this one, because you have more thoughts, you've had a lot more time to digest this stuff.
Yeah, my thoughts kind of span our previous discussion or previous interviews and also future interviews. I've interviewed a few people that are kind of just on the shelf right now, ready to be edited and released and everything. Okay, something that he mentioned in the interview about how we're reactionary creatures, I really kind of latched onto that as someone who struggles with anxiety and who has had was seeing a fantastic therapist up in New York who kept saying that I have a preset ready brain, having OCD. And that kind of really fascinated me.
What did he mean by preset ready?
It's that, like, my mind is constantly anticipating bad things happening so I can get myself ready. So I'm almost in this, like, constant state of trying to analyze, trying to be a step ahead of everything and trying to prepare myself for actions or situations that I'm gonna face. So my brain is, and that can manifest in many different ways. Racing thoughts. So, like, my brain is, like, playing out scenarios constantly. If I'm worried about something, it could be even just, like, muscle tension, you know, just, like, getting my body physically ready to react to a certain threat that my mind is saying is gonna, I'm never, like, really under any, like, physical harm, but my body is reacting like it is. When we first started this podcast, one of the things that I wanted to discover, or one of the things I wanted to figure out, was how people that I grew up with, people that were devout Christians, how they had this sense of peace about them, and that they were, like, overjoyed and really, like, passionate about their beliefs in their God. But they also had, like, a certain level of peace that I did not possess, and other people that followed different faiths, and I just didn't understand it. And one of the components of this journey was to discover what it was I was lacking. And I'm not entirely sure that I've discovered that yet, but I think I've gotten closer from just these past, like, 4 or 5 interviews that we had. And something that I've noticed is that the best way to get peace, or maybe peace is, the way that you achieve peace is by controlling your reactionary mind, the way that your mind reacts to things. We forget sometimes that we are animals. I mean, we're really smart animals, but we are animals at the same time. So our concerns in the base of our brain is to survive and pass our genes on. And if we don't survive, we can't pass our genes on. So our primary concern is to just survive. And anything that can come in and inhibit our chances of survival definitely causes us a lot of fear. And not knowing what that thing could be causes us a lot of fear. So I think that like the key to peace is being able to handle what comes your way. Because it's just, even at just a base animal level, we need that. So just listening to him and how it works for him is that he practices mindfulness, right? Like he said that he interprets things the way that they are.
Well, one of the things that stuck out to me is that he seeks to understand things. So when somebody gets angry, he tries not to be angry in response to their anger. He tries to understand why they're angry. And I think that's a higher approach than... well, one of the things that came to mind as you were talking is coming from the same circles as you. I think I did see people that had a sense of peace about them, but some of those people were also dismissive of things instead of seeking to understand them. They would dismiss something that was in the news, or instead of seeking to understand the other person's viewpoint. That's another mechanism, is just dismissing it so you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, because that leaves you in fear, because really you build up your biases and you build up your worldview, and when something comes in that destroys that, it's very frightening. We're creatures of habit. We want to feel like we know what's going on and have like an understanding of what's going on in the world. And when someone comes in and presents a very different idea that shatters that worldview, that causes us to be very defensive and get very anxious and quickly dismiss that.
I don't think it necessarily has to be something that makes somebody afraid, but I think people just, you hear phrases like garbage in, garbage out, so there's no point in listening to somebody who has an idea that you believe is garbage, because if you are under this impression, if you listen to it, you'll just start to reproduce it yourself. And
but what deems it garbage?
Simply disagreeing with it.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So it's not objectively garbage.
No.
Yeah.
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so he said we need to learn to see things for what they are and not just react to them. And I feel like that's kind of what he is doing through meditation. And as I was talking to someone, like I interviewed a Scientologist maybe a week ago now, and that'll be released later. And just as a little preview, he was talking about how like important it was to have knowledge and everything. So his approach, that when he was going to be presented with something, he felt that he took the preemptive strikes already to have that knowledge to then be able to counteract a distressful situation or any situation that's presented to him. So he gets the confidence, and therefore through confidence the peace. And even when we talk to Liam about his Wiccan beliefs, he's seeing, well, this could be a potential outcome. Well, I'm going to control that potential outcome by casting a spell. And that's how he controls a situation that could act upon him. So it's almost like I have beginning to realize that by getting peace, you have to figure out maybe this is not the best way of saying it, but what suits you.
You need to find a code of conduct for yourself. How do I conduct myself when approached with information that agrees with me versus disagrees with me?
Yeah, or either information or any kind of hard time. I guess, any kind of
stressor.
Any stress or any kind of, anything that causes any emotion, any situation that you find yourself in. And it's like religion could just boil down to, and getting peace from a religion could boil down to a personality type and finding the program that works best for them and just their personality type. Now that disregards the ultimate truth question of which religion's ultimate truth, which is a whole nother question. But just taking how religion gives people peace, it could be just that. They figured out, hey, this is how this fits me perfectly. This is how I'm able to find peace and not worry about being presented with another situation. Like Christians even, we talked about this a little bit before, that I find Christians can be like, they'll listen to hierarchies, they'll listen to what the pastor says and maybe what's in the Bible, but they'll listen to, okay, so I'm going through this thing and then a sermon hit me and I'm going to adopt that as a response to this situation. And then any other situation that looks similar to the situation I just went through, I'm going to use this response to it. So maybe that's, how Christians deal with it. They like to not be alone, and nobody likes to be alone in making decisions, but it really puts them away from making final decisions because it's not necessarily their decision to react in a certain way, but they are adopting a way that to react how it's told to them, Sorry.
There are also Christian teachings, like there's this doctrine that God grants peace that surpasses all understanding. That comes straight out of Scripture. So it's a Christian belief that God supplies peace that is not subjected to your level of understanding of whatever you're going through. So your level of understanding might be that you're about to be executed as a martyr, for the faith, but God can present you with peace in that situation. And so and I've got a feeling that plenty of other religions have similar doctrines. So it's a complex thing, it comes down to spirituality as well as, I think you're approaching it from a very rational standpoint of what is it about the religion and the way you receive from the religion or the way you interact with it that allows you to create a mindset of peace. And that might just be you approaching it from an agnostic viewpoint.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was like, because I haven't even accepted that there's an existence of God necessarily yet, or which God there is, or a spiritual force. I haven't even come to terms with that. So I feel like you're right, coming at it at an angle of being very rational and being...
Where somebody who does believe in any one of those gods might say like, it's this God's job to grant you peace. That's one of the things that he simply does. It's a promise that you can claim for yourself.
Can I ask a challenging question? I know that you're a Christian, but could you be attributing the peace that you're actually getting from psychology and applying it to God then? To God, and I put that in quotes. You guys can't see. Put it in quotes to God.
Nice wind sound. Yeah, I think some people do that, but then, but that's not peace that surpasses understanding. That's peace that's well within the compass of understanding. When you're about to die, or something goes terribly wrong and you have a sense of peace with it, that does surpass understanding to some degree. And there are probably also psychological principles at play, like denial. It could be denial. It could be a very strong sense of denial that your situation is...
Or total belief in something, whether it's real or not. You can fully, wholeheartedly believe in something to the point where it becomes reality for you. Chaos magic.
Well, belief is for that purpose. You expect what you believe in to be manifested around you.
Yeah.
That's part of why you chose to believe it, because you believe it's real within the chaos. So either way, if peace works, then peace works.
That's true, yeah. But then I think that what I'm learning is, at least where I'm at right now, today's June 3rd? June 3rd, 2017 at 3:00 p.m. Where my mind is at right now is that I'm thinking I need to find the program, and when I say program, the religion that works for me, that I think that, but then can I even fool myself into peace? Although I guess it's not fooling myself, because it will teach me the practices to then achieve that peace. Through the way that the religion is structured and practiced. That is going to conclude this episode of the Faith in Humanity podcast. First of all, as always, thank you all so much for listening. It means so much to both Sam and I. You just being here to listen is more than enough, but if you could do something a little extra and just rate us on iTunes or Google Play or wherever you get your podcasts, that would help us out immensely and help others to find our podcast. To keep up to date with everything that's going on, be sure to like our Facebook page, The Faith in Humanity Podcast, and subscribe to us on YouTube, also at The Faith in Humanity Podcast. Questions? Comments? Drop us an email at tfih.podcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And until next time, stay safe and peace be with you.